Have you ever encountered a woman who, without seeking attention, commands a room with her sheer presence? Do you wonder about the subtle, almost undetectable shift that occurs when a woman stops reacting to men emotionally and begins to simply observe? What if mastering this shift is the key to unlocking an undeniable power that leaves men intrigued and unable to look away? If you want to support the channel, you could drop a super thanks or simply buy me a coffee using the link down below. I'm your host, Alfred. Let's get into the video. She who understands her value moves through the world like a question mark no man can answer. And that is her power. In a world saturated with noise and attention-seeking, some women choose silence, not because they're shy, but because they know the power of not having to explain themselves. These women do not seek to fit in. They're built to stand apart. The Sigma woman, she doesn't flirt her way into rooms. She walks in with presence, and suddenly everyone forgets what they were talking about. But there's a shift that happens, a moment of clarity. It's when the Sigma woman finally stops viewing men through the lens of emotion, fantasy, or social programming, and sees the hidden code that drives male behavior. That shift is a turning point. From that moment forward, the way she relates to men is never the same. She stops reacting, she starts observing, and men. They feel the weight of something they can't quite name and can't walk away from. This video is for my wisdom seekers, the ones who crave truth over trends. I'm sharing with you 10 powerful realizations that change everything when a Sigma woman truly understands them. If you're ready to stop playing roles and start moving with intention, this is your space. Number 1, the unseen leverage. There's something a Sigma woman realizes one day that flips everything upside down. It's not about looks, it's not about charm, it's not about trying harder or being nicer or more desirable. It's about energy. That's the shift. That's the lever. It's not that she didn't have it before. It's that she never realized men were responding to it long before she ever opened her mouth. Because the truth is, these men are wired to sense energy before anything else. They feel the charge of a woman who isn't seeking, who isn't waiting, who isn't available for performance. And that charge, that's what pulls them in deeper than any compliment or flirtation ever could. The Sigma woman begins to see that she doesn't have to impress. She doesn't have to over-explain. She doesn't have to mold herself into the image of what she thinks a man wants. In fact, the moment she stops doing all that is the moment men start to actually feel her. Not the idea of her groundedness, her calm, her refusal to be emotionally provoked, her ability to sit in silence and let the other person fill the space with nervous words. That's the beginning of real power. This is when she understands what leverage actually is. It's not about manipulation. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about understanding that the less you need, the more powerful your presence becomes. And this shakes men because most of them are used to being needed, chased, or put on pedestals. But when a woman comes along who doesn't pedestal him, who doesn't need his validation, he either runs or rises. And the Sigma woman doesn't care which. She starts to notice that men respond not to her availability, but to her absence, that she says more by leaving a conversation early than she ever could by staying and trying to fix it. She learns that stillness makes more noise in a man's mind than constant reaction. That the mystery men claim to want isn't in being complicated, it's in being centered. It's not mystery for the sake of strategy, it's just not over-explaining, not over-giving, not over-efforting. When she does speak, it hits different. Because there's weight behind it, she starts watching men get nervous around her calm. They can't read her easily. They try harder. They ask more questions. They overinvest because they feel the gap between their expectations and her reality. She becomes a mirror, a trigger, a lesson, and she's not doing anything on purpose. She's simply no longer doing the things she used to do out of fear, approval, or need. The leverage is in being hard to read, not because she's playing a role, but because she's simply not performing, and in that realness, she becomes unforgettable. Men remember her because she didn't react, because she walked away, because she didn't chase them when they pulled away, she let them go. And in that letting go, she created space for them to do the chasing. She no longer tries to prove her worth. She simply is. And that more than anything is what men respond to, not effort, not performance, not even beauty, but that quiet confidence that says, I was whole before you arrived. I'll be whole after you leave. That's what flips the script. That's the hidden power. That's the unseen leverage. And once she sees it, she never unsees it again. Number 2. Silent boundaries speak loud. The Sigma woman doesn't shout her boundaries. She doesn't explain them. She doesn't ask for permission to have them. They exist like a force field, quiet, invisible, yet deeply felt. A man doesn't realize he's hit one until it's too late. There's no drama, no speech, just presence, and then absence. That's how she communicates, not through confrontation, but through contrast. One day she's there, the next she's not. And the silence that follows teaches louder than any words ever could. She learned long ago that arguing with disrespect doesn't restore respect, that pleading for change only signals tolerance, that explaining the same thing twice is emotional labor unpaid. So she stopped, not because she's passive, but because she's precise. The Sigma woman understands that withdrawal is a complete sentence. That detachment is not cruelty, it's clarity. And nothing recalibrates a man's behavior faster than a woman who simply stops participating in dysfunction. There's a difference between emotional maturity and emotional availability. She has the first, but she doesn't offer the second to just anyone. Her energy isn't open source, it's sacred ground, and that's why men notice the shift. When she starts to pull back, they don't feel ignored. They feel judged, because deep down, they know they failed a test. They weren't even aware they were taking. That's what makes her different. Her boundaries aren't a performance. They're a presence felt, unmistakable, non-negotiable. She doesn't block to punish. She disappears to protect, not to punish him, to preserve herself. And that distance doesn't beg to be understood. It just exists. And in that space, men confront a silence so loud it forces self-reflection. They replay every conversation. They wonder if they missed a sign. They feel the cold edge of a door that didn't slam. It just slowly, gracefully closed. What they don't realize is that her silence isn't passive aggression. It's power, conservation. She refuses to pour into broken vessels. She no longer explains what decency looks like. She no longer translates her worth into a language someone refuses to learn. This isn't pride, it's policy, and it took her years of emotional bankruptcy to draft it. She used to explain, she used to give second chances, she used to believe in potential, but now she watches actions. She lets behavior speak, and when it does, she listens, not with her ears, but with her exit. There is no need for closure. The behavior was the closure. The disrespect was the ending, and her leaving is the conclusion. Men notice this because most women don't walk away quietly. They cry, they post. They try to make him see, but the Sigma woman just goes still. She detaches like mist, No anger, no chaos, just disappearance, and that more than anything haunts him because now he has no access, no last word, only the echo of what he mishandled. This kind of boundary is not something you can fake. It has to be lived. She had to lose herself once to become this clear. She had to be disrespected in subtle ways, had to beg for basic things, had to compromise her standards until she didn't. Recognize herself, and when she finally hit emotional bottom, she didn't rise with fire. She rose with frost, quiet, strong, resolved. She began to build a new life, one where her peace was not up for negotiation, one where her attention had a cost, one where access was earned, not assumed. Men don't know what to do with this kind of woman. They try the old tricks, silence, withdrawal, inconsistency, but she's not triggered. She doesn't chase. She doesn't ask why. She just mirrors. If he pulls back, she disappears. If he disrespects, she detaches. If he lies, she vanishes. And it's not a game, it's survival. It's the new default setting of a woman who no longer asks to be understood. This boundary system rewires every dynamic. Suddenly, men find themselves working harder, being more honest, being more intentional, because they feel that this woman will not explain herself, will not nag, will not ask twice. She either feels safe or she leaves. And that pressure forces men to level up or fall off. There's no in-between, and the irony, the more she holds these boundaries, the more men respect her. Even the ones who lose her speak of her with reverence. They'll say she was different. They'll say she didn't play games, that she didn't need them, but made them feel like more of a man when they rose to meet her standards, that she never begged, never yelled, never lowered herself to get their attention. She simply stopped engaging, and that hurt more than any insult ever could. That's why silence is her loudest language, why distance is her declaration, why her absence is a punishment more powerful than presence ever could be. Not because she wants to hurt, but because she refuses to be hurt the same way twice. And once she learns that men hear silence more clearly than explanations, that boundaries enforced through detachment are respected more than boundaries discussed through endless talks. She steps into a new power, a clean power, one that doesn't need to be performed, one that simply is. Her silent boundaries don't scream. "You can't treat me this way." They whisper with absolute certainty, "You never get the chance again." Number 3, the no-chase contract. There comes a point when the Sigma woman makes a quiet, sacred vow to herself. I will not chase, not love, not attention, not explanations. She realizes that every time she reached for someone who was pulling away, she diluted herself. Every time she tried to convince someone of her value, she forgot it. Every time she initiated to fill the silence, she traded her power for crumbs. So she stops, not because she's bitter, because she's awake. Chasing feels unnatural to her now. It feels like betrayal, not of someone else, but of herself. She knows that what's meant for her will move toward her, not because of magic, but because of magnetism, because her stillness draws in those who can feel her depth, and anyone who can't feel it isn't aligned with her frequency. That's not rejection, that's filtration. That's the contract. The no-chase contract is not a strategy. It's not some high-level dating advice she found online. It's an internal truth, a line drawn not in the sand, but in the soul. She will not prove herself to people who cannot see. She will not pursue those who aren't moving toward her. If energy is not mutual, it's irrelevant, and she applies this with elegance, not ego. Men don't know what to do with this kind of woman. They're used to women who follow up, who check in, who ask what's wrong. fight for a connection even when the other side goes cold. But she's not wired that way anymore. The moment she feels energy shifting, she doesn't panic. She pauses, she doesn't overthink, she observes, and if the pattern continues, she exits quietly, cleanly, without warning, because the truth is, the warning was the change in energy. She just doesn't explain what she already noticed. This unnerves men. It catches them off guard. They don't expect to be dropped without drama, without begging, without a final emotional explosion. But that's the point. She doesn't need closure. She is the closure. Her silence is not an invitation to chase her. It's a message that she won't chase you, and that more than anything flips the dynamic, because what happens next is fascinating. The very men who expected her to come after them don't know how to handle her absence. They wait, they test, they pull back further, expecting her to collapse into the gap, but she never does. She simply keeps moving, not as revenge, as principle. Her life is forward only. She doesn't rewind, she doesn't chase, she doesn't try to reopen doors she walked away from. And slowly, they start to feel it. The difference between a woman who leaves to get a reaction and a woman who leaves because she's done. In this space, men either rise or disappear. Some try harder. They send messages, they attempt grand gestures, and here's the twist. She's not flattered. She's evaluating, not the words, not the promises, the pattern, the effort, the consistency, because she doesn't fall for moments anymore. She watches momentum, and if it's not there, she blesses them with silence again, not out of malice, but maturity. She no longer believes in mixed signals. She believes in energy, and energy doesn't lie. If she has to guess how someone feels, she already knows. If she has to initiate all the time, she's misaligned. If she's always trying while the other is just receiving, she's in a one-sided contract, and that violates the one she made with herself, the no-chase contract. This doesn't mean she's closed off. She's open, she's receptive, but she's not chasing anyone who walks away. She doesn't run after someone to prove she's worth staying for, because she already knows she is, and that's what makes her different. That's what makes her dangerous in the best way. Her detachment is her defense. Her absence is her statement. Her silence is her truth. The men who can feel this shift either step up or step back. And either way, she's at peace because she no longer measures her worth by whether someone chooses her. She measures her life by how aligned she feels in her own presence. And if someone adds to that, beautiful. If not, they're free to go. That's the essence of sovereignty. That's the soul of the no-chase contract. It's not punishment, it's protection. It's not a tactic, it's transformation. The Sigma woman no longer negotiates with low effort. She no longer tries to maintain dynamics where she's doing all the work. She values herself too deeply to overextend for someone who won't meet her halfway. And the more she honors that, the more men shift around her. The ones who aren't serious disappear. The ones who are rise. And here's the most powerful part. She doesn't even notice the ones who fade anymore. Her eyes aren't on the exit. They're on the future. She's not tracking who left. She's creating space for who's coming, because she knows when you stop chasing, you start choosing. And choosing is the ultimate act of power. So she stays still, she stays centered, and in that stillness, she becomes a force, one that doesn't chase, because she already knows that what's real can feel her from across the room, across the silence, across the distance, and if it's meant, it moves toward her. That's not hope, that's law. Number 4, he feels it before he knows it. Before a man even understands what's happening, his body responds to her, not her appearance, not her words, her energy. Something about her presence makes him either curious, intimidated, or activated. Sometimes all three, and he can't explain it. That's the first sign that he's in the orbit of a Sigma woman, because with her, the shift is felt long before it's processed. She walks into a room and doesn't demand attention. She doesn't try to charm. She doesn't adjust her posture to be noticed. But suddenly, the mood changes. People become quieter. Eyes shift in her direction without realizing it. Men, in particular, start to feel something unfamiliar. Not desire, not admiration, but awareness. Awareness that they're in the presence of someone they cannot easily read. Someone who isn't waiting to be chosen, someone who won't entertain nonsense, and that subtle pressure makes them more conscious of themselves. That's where it begins. What confuses them is that she doesn't do anything, she simply is. And in that being, something starts to stir. Her detachment isn't passive, it's heavy. Her silence isn't empty, it's rich with decisions. Every time she says less, he hears more. Every time she pulls back, he leans in, not because she's playing games, but because her energy isn't open for random access. It requires a password, intention. Most men are not used to this. They're used to predictable emotional cues. If a woman is interested, she shows it. If she's upset, she expresses it. If she wants more, she pushes. But the Sigma woman does none of that. If something shifts, she retreats into stillness. If a boundary is crossed, she doesn't yell, she vanishes. If she feels disconnected, she simply stops sharing, and this throws men off. Their emotional radar starts to blink, but they can't find the signal. It's not on the surface, it's under the skin. That's the moment when the ego starts to panic, because ego thrives on knowing, on control, on certainty. And she provides none of that. She provides presence, and that presence makes him question things. Is she interested? Is she bored? Did I mess up? Why do I care what she thinks? Why do I feel like I want to prove myself when she hasn't even asked for anything? It's because she's activated something older, deeper, his desire to be seen and respected by someone who is not easily moved. She doesn't flatter, she doesn't pretend, she doesn't perform, which means any sign of approval from her feels like the rarest currency. When she looks at him a little longer than usual, it feels like a win. When she offers a small compliment, it lands like thunder. And when she disappears, it haunts. He begins to realize he's not sure where he stands with her, and instead of walking away like he might with someone else, he sticks around longer than he planned, not because she's seducing him, but because her lack of neediness removes his usual escape routes. He can't blame her for being clingy. He can't call her insecure. He can't put her in a box. She doesn't fit in one, and because of that, he keeps circling, trying to understand what's pulling him in. This is the moment where many men confuse attraction with discomfort. They start to feel vulnerable, and vulnerability is not something they've associated with women before, but she forces them inward, not by demanding emotional availability, but by being emotionally reserved. She shows them what control looks like, and it's not domination. It's not detachment, it's emotional self-possession. And that's rare. He might test her, pull away, stay silent for days, just to see if she'll reach out. But she doesn't. She never does. And that's when it hits. She was never waiting. She was always watching, always choosing. And now that he's faded, she's already replaced the connection with something more nourishing: solitude, creativity, peace. He realizes, sometimes too late, that she was never passive. She was just discerning, and he failed the test of consistency before he even realized he was being watched. If he's emotionally mature, this becomes a moment of growth. He steps up, he becomes clearer, more intentional, not to win her, but because being around her demands it. She raises his self-awareness by simply existing. She challenges his default settings by refusing to play his games, and that kind of influence he'll never forget. But if he's not ready, he'll collapse under her stillness. He'll project, call her cold, say she's hard to read, complain that she's too much work. But deep down, he knows the truth. He wasn't ready for someone who doesn't need validation, who doesn't explain herself, who doesn't wait for a man to act right. And in that quiet understanding, he walks away. Not because he doesn't want her, but because he can't reach her. She's not unreachable because she's distant. She's unreachable because she refuses to lower her frequency to be understood. She lives in emotional altitude, and not everyone can breathe there. That's what he feels. Not distance, but height. Not coldness, but depth. And that's what she finally understands. That men respond before they understand. That her energy speaks before she ever says a word. That when she's in her truth, she doesn't have to convince anyone of anything. They either feel it or they don't. And if they don't, they're not meant to. That's her gift. That's her signal. That's the moment everything shifts. Not because she said it, but because he felt it. Number 5. Mystery is not a strategy, it's a state. The Sigma woman doesn't try to be mysterious. She just is, because her life is so full, so rooted in inner purpose, that she forgets to curate herself for the male gaze. She forgets to overexpress. She doesn't feel the need to fill silences or explain every decision. That alone makes her unreadable, not because she's trying to be elusive, but because she doesn't live to be understood. She lives to be aligned. Most people confuse mystery with withholding. They think being hard to read is about being vague on purpose, about calculated silence, about playing a role. But her mystery isn't crafted. It's organic. She simply doesn't broadcast her every move, her every emotion, or her every thought. Not because she's hiding, but because she values privacy over performance. That creates tension, not chaos, not confusion, but real tension. The kind that invites curiosity, not manipulation. Men feel this immediately. They sense they can't figure her out. They don't know how much she likes them. They don't know what she expects. They try to analyze her based on the models they've used before, and nothing fits because she's not being unpredictable. She's being uninterested in people who expect to be entertained. She's aloof, she's centered, and men who are used to control read that as resistance. She doesn't withhold emotion. She just doesn't offer it on demand. Her warmth exists, but it's not for sale. It's offered when she feels safe, when the other person has shown consistency, integrity, and depth. That's the true source of her mystery emotional economy. She doesn't flood you with affection. She lets connection breathe, and in that breathing space, men either lean in or break down. What makes her mysterious isn't silence. It's the contrast. She can be present, articulate, kind, and yet somehow remain untouchable. It's in the way she observes without reacting, the way she listens without performing, the way she maintains emotional poise, even when things get tense. That makes people wonder what's going on beneath that calm. What is she thinking? What does she want? And she's not interested in answering those questions, not to provoke, but because she doesn't owe that level of access to people who haven't earned it. That restraint is not coldness, it's discernment. She knows that attention given too easily is misunderstood. She doesn't play games. but she also doesn't volunteer her essence to one whose energy feels chaotic, confused, or shallow. That boundary confuses men who are used to surface-level validation. The deeper truth is, this: she's not hard to know. She's just hard to reach if you haven't done your own emotional work. Because she doesn't open up through charm. She opens through trust, and trust takes time. So while others are in a rush to be chosen, she's in a rhythm that only matches with those who know how to move slow, with intention, with presence. What they call mystery is actually her healing. Her boundaries, her self-regulation, her rich inner life that doesn't require a relationship to feel real. And the more she leans into that truth, the more powerful her presence becomes, not through exaggeration, but through depth. The mystery is not a mask, it's her emotional reality. And if you don't have the patience to understand it, you were never meant to be part of it. Number 6. Energy doesn't lie. Long before words are exchanged, before intentions are stated, before any labels are applied, the Sigma woman knows what time it is. She can feel the energy of a room like its texture. She doesn't wait for someone to prove themselves. She watches their aura. She notices the inconsistency between how a man acts when he's trying to impress versus how he acts when he thinks she's not looking. She doesn't need facts. She needs patterns, and energy always tells the truth. It's how she survived situations that once confused her. It's how she left relationships that looked perfect on the outside, because her body knew before her mind did. Her intuition screamed when words whispered. And now she doesn't override that instinct anymore. If a man's vibe feels off, she doesn't dig for reasons. She detaches, she doesn't accuse, she doesn't confront. She simply honors what she feels and moves accordingly. What's so profound is that men pick up on this sometimes without realizing it. They begin to realize that with her, it's not about what they say. It's about who they are, what they exude, what they carry into the room, because she picks up energy like it's scent, and if something smells off, she doesn't need to wait for the expiration date. This creates an unspoken accountability. Men find themselves being more honest, not because she asked, but because lying around her feels hollow. She doesn't react, but she sees, and that gaze, that calm, knowing gaze, makes deception feel stupid, childish, unnecessary. She doesn't catch men in lies. She lets them lie and walk away from their own potential. There's no arguing with her intuition because she doesn't debate. She decides her energy can't be bribed, flattered, or confused. That's what makes her powerful. She doesn't need evidence. She has awareness. She doesn't need to see messages or hear rumors. She can feel when the vibration drops, and when it does, she doesn't beg for clarity. She removes her presence, and men feel that absence harder than any confrontation because they're not used to women who move off energy. Alone, who don't need reasons, who don't wait for the lie to be exposed, she felt the shift. That was enough. And the men who stay, they rise to her energy. They clean up their words, their actions, their intentions, not to impress, but because her presence demands integrity, not with words, but with resonance. Energy doesn't lie, and neither does she. That's the contract now. She no longer asks, "What are we?" She asks herself, "How do I feel around him?" And that tells her everything. She doesn't analyze behavior, she calibrates to vibration. If it feels like tension, like imbalance, like performance, she bows out. If it feels clean, mutual, peaceful, she leans in, not fast, but real. And when a woman moves with this kind of self-trust, the entire dynamic changes. Suddenly, there's no room for manipulation, no space for double talk, no tolerance for half-love. Her vibe is the standard, her energy is the metric, and the world adjusts. Number 7. Attention is not affection. At a certain point in her self-evolution, the Sigma woman no longer mistakes being seen for being valued. She no longer confuses messages with meaning, compliments with commitment, or pursuit with presence. She has outgrown the illusion that attention equals affection because she knows attention is easy. It costs nothing. It costs nothing. It requires no integrity, no effort, no real investment. Anyone can give attention, but very few offer true emotional presence. This shift changes how she receives male energy. Once upon a time, she would have felt a spark from a sudden text, a late-night call, an emoji-studded compliment. Number 8. She cultivates her inner world. A Sigma woman understands that her most valuable resource isn't external validation, but the richness of her inner world. She dedicates time to introspection, self-reflection, and personal growth, treating her mind and spirit as sacred spaces. This deep internal cultivation means she's not reliant on external stimuli or male attention to feel complete or fulfilled. Her happiness and sense of purpose stem from within, making her less susceptible to the fleeting highs and lows of relationships. This self-sufficiency is felt by men who quickly realize that superficial gestures or empty promises won't penetrate her calm. She seeks genuine connection that can complement her already vibrant inner landscape, not complete it. Number 9. Her standards are non-negotiable, not a test. Unlike some who set high standards as a test for potential partners, the Sigma woman's standards are simply a reflection of her inherent value and what she requires for her own peace and growth. She's not playing games, she's simply living by her established principles. If a man cannot consistently meet these standards, which often include respect, consistency, emotional maturity, and integrity, she won't try to fix him or lower her expectations. Her non-negotiables are an extension of her self-respect, and she communicates them not through demands, but through her unwavering behavior. This clarity and firmness, devoid of drama or manipulation, compels men to either rise to the occasion genuinely or gracefully exit, as there's no room for ambiguity. Number 10. She sees through performance. A profound realization for the Sigma woman is her ability to discern authenticity from performance. She's no longer swayed by grand gestures, eloquent speeches, or manufactured charm. Her keen observation skills and intuitive understanding of energy allow her to cut through the facade that many men, and people in general, present. She instinctively recognizes when someone is acting a role to impress, rather than genuinely being themselves. This insight makes her immune to manipulation and superficial advances. She values congruence between words and actions, seeking individuals whose internal state aligns with their external presentation. This discernment is a powerful filter, allowing her to connect with truly authentic men while effortlessly sifting out those who operate from a place of pretense or insecurity. The Sigma woman's journey is a profound transformation, marked by a deep understanding of self and a powerful shift in how she engages with the world, especially in her interactions with men. Her journey from seeking external validation to embodying internal sovereignty is a testament to her strength and self-awareness. It teaches us that true power lies not in chasing, but in being, not in performing, but in embodying one's truth. Her silent boundaries, unwavering standards, and intuitive discernment create a magnetic presence that commands respect and attracts genuine connections, while effortlessly repelling what doesn't serve her highest good. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm your host, Alfred, and I read every comment.